Bracelet, and this is Cooking Classic. We are here in the studios of the Culinary Art Institute at Luzerne County Community College in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. Joining us is Chef Joseph Caputo. Chef Joseph has a restaurant in Scranton, Zuppa DiGiorno, and he also owns a catering business, Catering by Joseph. He cooks on a cruise line. He's written a book. And now I guess I said it all so you can go home. No, I'm only kidding.
We have to make soup first.
No, let's start with the book.
Sure.
Now, The Accidental Chef.
Yes.
How did that title come about?
Well, it's quite accidental, so I thought, that I got into this racket,
Right.
so to speak. I'd been an educator for 20 years, and then through some unforeseen circumstance, had to leave that position. Okay. And the reality of that hit me maybe a few months later, but I decided to go to culinary school because I always liked to cook. And I was a little depressed after that, thinking, I lost my job, and it was something I had done most of my life. So I began to just write down all the crazy things that I did along the way to pay for my college education. I always cooked, and I had a little underground business going on. And before I knew it, I had this little book put together.
That's
and
great.
At the end of it, I realized it was no accident. I meant to be
You
in
were
the
meant
kitchen.
to do
So,
this.
it took a little while, but I got
Yeah,
there.
but that's okay, and aren't we lucky for that too?
Yeah, part of the
we
journey.
are.
Yeah.
We are. So tell me about your restaurant.
The restaurant is called Zuppa DiGiorno. It's in the Ash Street complex in Scranton. It's kind of hidden away.
Right.
It's a plaza, really, with mostly medical professionals around us. We are open 9 to 3, Monday through Friday, and we serve a variety of soups, obviously, the
Right.
name. And then we also have pressed sandwiches, panini sandwiches that we make as well, and a variety of salads and desserts. And it's just a quick lunch in and out. We only have a few tables, mostly takeout and lots of deliveries.
That's terrific. That's great to have.
It is.
It's different.
Everyone needs to eat lunch.
Yeah, that's what everybody needs to eat. Are you kidding?
Yeah, and it's great for me
Me
because
all the time.
I kind of kept my schedule of school. I start
Yeah,
at
there
9 and
you
I'm
go.
out at 3,
There you go.
And then I do some catering jobs on the weekends, and then I get to teach classes at the restaurant too. I take 16
Okay.
students, maybe twice or 3 times a month, and we do private classes at the restaurant. And that's been well subscribed for many years now.
Oh, that's terrific. That's wonderful. And a lot of this has come about learning through your parents, your grandparents,
my
correct?
grandmother
So
really
when you say
influenced
that
me.
this is really you,
Yes.
you really mean that.
Yeah, I
correct?
mean that because always around food, always had a weight problem because I like to eat. But my grandparents were great cooks. My mom was a great cook, and so I hung around them growing up and watched them do it, and always asked if I could repeat what they did, and always enjoyed it. And then through college and most of high school, I worked in restaurants, so I was always around food.
Right.
So it wasn't something that was novel to me. I just never thought of making a living doing it.
Now the soup that you're going to make,
It's a minestrone, Italian minestrone.
okay, and now is this something that obviously that you ate growing up?
Oh yeah,
I
minestrone
love
could be
it.
almost any combination of vegetables. It's a thick stew or a thick soup.
Okay.
And minestrone is what we would call cucina povere, which means of a poor kitchen, because peasants.
Very tasty.
Yeah, well, peasants used whatever was around
Right.
that they had, and most of them had gardens. Growing up, my grandfather had a wonderful garden, and whatever grew in the garden, we made into the minestrone.
All right. We're going to head into the kitchen and we're going to see what this minestrone is all about, what the ingredients are, and give it a good taste. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Holly, a student from Luzerne County Community College with your culinary tip of the day. I'm going to show you how to dice an onion. First, we cut the onion in half. Next, we peel the outer layer. Lay it on its side and make 4 cuts, vertical cuts. This would be for a larger dice. Next, I'm going to cut parallel with the cutting board. 5 or 6 or more cuts straight down. And let the end fall away. Always remember to use a sharp knife as it makes your work easier. This is your culinary tip of the day. Bon appetit!
Welcome back to Cooking Classic, where Chef Joseph Caputo and I are making an Italian minestrone today.
Yes, minestrone.
Lots of ingredients.
Lots of ingredients, because minestrone means thick soup or thick stew-like soup. And usually in the cucina povera, which would be the poor kitchen, you know, peasant-wise would pretty much cook what was in the garden or maybe what they had left in their refrigerator, although they do shop every day in Italy. And that's what they would make the soup from.
And why did they actually call it minestrone?
Well, minestrone, there's another word called minestra, which is very similar, and it comes from ministrare, which in Italian means to administer. And so the father, or the patrone, the head of the family, would dish out to the family and administer to the family.
I told him it's funny. Always a story, right?
Always a story.
Always
in Italy,
a
there's
story.
always a story. And some are true and some not so true.
All right. What ingredients do you have for your minestrone?
Well, for minestrone today, we're going to start with a base. I'm going to use a little extra virgin olive oil, and yes, it is extra virgin. It's an expensive oil, but nevertheless, we're sweating the vegetables. So we'll be perfectly fine to do that with that type of oil, which has a low smoke point.
So why can you sweat vegetables in that, but you really shouldn't use it for
for frying, you want something that's not as verdant. This is the first press, which means it's the greenest of the oil. So the lighter the olive oil, the higher the smoke point, meaning it won't burn. If you were going to deep fry something, you'd use canola oil, peanut oil, grapeseed oil, and such. But we're going to start with the basis of what the French call mirepoix. But always remember, Italians invented cooking. I truly believe it. The French were just smart enough.
He's not biased at all.
The French were smart enough because they wrote it down, so that's what it's all about. But nevertheless, I have my extra virgin olive oil in there, and I'm going to begin the first step of soup making, which is called foundation. So in order to make the foundation, we need some onion, about 2 cups. So I'm going to use onion, and the French called it mirepoix, onion.
There you go.
Celery.
They wrote it down.
And
he told
carrot.
us.
That was carrot.
I'll take that.
And this is celery. And we begin what is called the sweating process. We don't want the vegetables to be brown because we're not making a caramelized soup. We're more or less making a lovely soup with softened vegetables. I'm putting quite a bit of kosher salt. I know it looks like a lot, but it isn't very salty. I want you to taste it later. You'll tell me if it is.
I will.
But the salt will help draw out the liquid and begin the softening process.
So is that where people make their mistake, though? They don't sweat the vegetables?
Well, it depends what you want to do. If you were cooking mushrooms, mushrooms taste great because they get brown. If you put salt on the mushrooms, they're not going to brown. Moisture is going to come out. So in this case, we want the moisture to come out. I have a tall pan, which creates steam, and I'm moving it around in the pan, which is going to also make it steam. If I were making French onion soup, I'd put the onions in, I'd use a lower pan, and I wouldn't touch them. I'd walk away a little bit, and then come back and then turn them once they begin to caramelize. In this case, just sweating.
It always smells so good, and they look so nice, too.
Carrot,
the change in the color already.
Carrot,
so
celery,
simple.
onion, very nice. Now we have some garlic here, because what great Italian recipe
does not
wouldn't
have
garlic? And I have it minced rather
garlic.
small. Yeah, I have it minced small because we don't want to get a chunk of garlic. We want it to have the garlic flavor. I put it in later because if it burns, then you have to start all over.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
Yeah, there's 2 ways to do garlic. Raw, not so good. Burnt, worse. So we're just going to toast it up a little bit in with the carrot, the celery, and the onion as we build this foundation. And you can smell that, can't you?
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah. And a lot of soups, like my vegetable soup that I start, even my chicken soup, all begins with some type of base of carrot, celery, onion, because here again, builds the foundation. When you think about foundation, think about wine. Wine has great legs. How many times have you had a soup and you say, geez, tastes like dishwater?
Right.
Exactly.
There it is.
So that's going to give us the legs.
Okay.
So we get those all nice and sweated up. Now, as I said, whatever happens to be around the garden, you know, I cooked in Italy, as I told you once before, and you know, we had a garden out there that have fresh yellow squash.
I love
so
that.
we cubed that up. Notice things are cut beautifully so they fit on the spoon. Okay? You know, add our zucchini too. And then we think about other seasoning that we want to add to it. So a little black pepper might be nice. We'll add some of that.
So really then with this soup, people can put any vegetables in it that they choose.
Certainly can. However, no, you know, certain vegetables may not work. For example, eggplant. It might make it a little bitter. Okay? But if you certainly wanted to add some fresh sweet corn to it, you certainly could add corn if you like that. If you wanted to add some peas, I might suggest you do it at the end. But a traditional minestrone is usually this variation of vegetables. Okay? Now,
and this is in your book?
This minestrone, yes, is in my book.
The Accidental Chef.
In the Accidental
Chef. Again later, just in case you didn't see it earlier.
Now, I have some dried oregano here. Actually, it's a little dried Italian seasoning, which is a little term of marjoram, thyme, oregano, and rosemary.
No.
Very similar to herbes de Provence.
It doesn't matter to you if it's dried or
Well,
if it's
yes,
fresh.
it does.
It does.
Dried herbs are more potent. When you're making a soup is going to go into stage 2. This was foundation stage 1. Stage 2 is development. It's going to cook for a little while. As a result, a dried herb you will usurp the flavor in the development process. Fresh herbs are something like I have here as an example, which are parsley, and this would be a nice finishing herb, but we really wouldn't want to cook with that. We could, but the dried herb is going to give it more intensity and back to that leg idea that I told you before. So we'll mix that up again. And that's now beginning to sweat nicely. And you can see as we look at it, certain vegetables, like the onion as an example, or maybe the yellow squash, is starting to take on a translucency. And that is what we call the sweating process. And as well, you begin to sweat too.
Because you're over the bowl of soup.
Well, and it's good for your complexion, you know? I mean, all those fumes, they can't be bad. It's got to be good. It's not toxic, we know that much. So there we go. Now, I added my herbs, and then I want to add more depth of flavor. So some fresh tomatoes. Now these tomatoes are lovely because I get these from California because they're picked at the peak of their perfection in September, October. And this is a lovely product, and I've been using them ever since. So these I hand crushed. It's a whole plum tomato. They're called robusto, which means they're robust. And I just kind of broke them apart with my fingers, and I kept the juices. And that's going to add another layer of depth to the soup. So the tomatoes go in. But it still won't be a tomato base. It will be more of a brothy, but the tomato will still have substance. So we'll add that in now.
Tomatoes are one of my favorite vegetables too. I really like vegetables.
And
so this is a great soup.
And that's filled with lycopene, which is supposed to be excellent for you as well. Antioxidants and such. Absolutely. So it's all very healthy. And you could eat a nice sized bowl of this and not feel guilty about anything. Because I do. Now, I have potatoes here. Now, potatoes have a certain amount of starch. I cut these in advance, and then we put them in water so they don't turn brown. I'm not going to add the water to it.
Is it just a white potato?
This happens to be a Yukon Gold potato.
Okay, Yukon Gold.
Or you certainly could use
like
red
you have
skin.
a couple different
Yeah, there are. Well, you know, a lot of times in the kitchen you have potatoes and you say, hey, we need to use these potatoes. So we have the Yukon Gold, and I also have some red skin potatoes here. So we'll add these in. And the idea is the soup in the development process, we just want the potatoes to cook a little bit so they're tender but still have a little bite to them, so they don't lose what we call their integrity. So we're going to add that to the to the soup. And that's all going to add starch content too, which will help thicken the soup naturally without it being starchy or floury. I got some water in there too. There we go. Thank you very much. So now we have the basis of our ingredients, pretty much. And then we're going to add a bay leaf. You just want to be sure you take the bay leaf out. Bay adds a wonderful quality to soups and stews. However, the down part is you must take it out because a person could choke if you weren't careful. So you want to be sure you take it out.
We always say in our house, the person that gets the bay leaf has good luck.
Has good luck. It's like a fondue pot. The person who drops the piece of fondue, you have to kiss the person to your right. Did you know that? So,
no,
so you have to
I didn't. The dropping fondue.
I guess that's
story.
Danish or Swedish or some Scandinavian philosophy there. All right, so now as you can tell, it's gently coming to the boil, and that's nice. We don't like to boil our soups. It's violent. It's what's the word? It's a salt to the soup. Okay, so we want to kind of treat them with a little tender, loving care. You know, like a nice lady. So
that's why they cook so long because we're not going to boil them.
Absolutely, and they don't have to cook too long because, as I said, I want those vegetables to have some integrity. But on the other hand, the French have a phrase they call frémir, which is kind of like a little bloop. It's like a little bubble. And when you see it do the bubble every now and then, you know it's great. But if it's a violent bubble, then that's too much, and we want to lower it down. Okay?
Okay. So we're going to break right now, and we're going to come back and do step 2 of making this soup, Italian minestrone. See you in a minute.
Thinking of taking it to the next level? Make it happen! Luzerne County Community College offers a quality education at an affordable price. It's the best choice when you're trying to make something of yourself.
Luzerne County Community College makes it happen.
We We are back, and this is Cooking Classic. I am with Chef Joseph Caputo, and we have been making Italian minestrone. Now, the foundation of the soup has been made.
That's
While
right.
we were gone, we did add the broth,
Yes.
chicken broth, correct?
Chicken broth, and it's really nice if you can make your own chicken broth, and I have recipes for that if you're interested.
You do?
Or if you're going to use canned broth, then you need to use low sodium so that you can
Okay.
control the amount of salt that goes into the soup.
Okay. Now, do you talk about the cooking, making chicken broth in your book at all, or
I
that's
don't.
something we can get?
I don't, but that's something you can get.
Okay.
It's very basic. You know, it's too funny because one time I had a lady make a chicken soup, and she said, "Chef, your soup just doesn't taste like my soup." And I thought, oh, I'm so happy because she wouldn't buy my soup anymore. She said, "I did everything you said. I took the 3 chickens, I washed them, I put them in the pot, I skimmed it, I put the celery, the carrot, the onion, and then after I skimmed and skimmed, I threw out all the dirty water," she said, "and I put fresh water back in." So I said, "Love, you threw out the soup," you know. So it was kind of funny.
You threw out the
Yeah,
soup.
but a stock is made primarily with bones. If you can become friends with
Right.
a butcher, backs work well, and anything that's bony. If it has a little meat on it, that's okay. It's about a 5 to 7 hour process,
Is it
but
really?
it's so worth it. You can cool it down, put it in quart containers, and then freeze it.
Freeze
And
it.
it works.
All right.
While you
About
were
how much stock did you put in there?
in this, we have 10 cups of stock to make soup for 8 to 10 people, maybe 8
Okay.
hungry people and 10 not so hungry people. And then I did put the ditalini in. You can cook the pasta in advance and then
Okay.
add it. I know when my mother made soups, my father came home from work late, so she'd have the pasta on the side, and then she'd add it to the soup when
To
he
the
came
soup.
in, because it will absorb the broth. But since we're going to be eating it, I like to add it because what it does is, as it cooks, it helps thicken the
Thicken the
soup with
soup.
the starch. And as I said, we don't want a heavy boil, so now that it's coming to the boil, I'm going to take it down slightly, put a wooden spoon just like my grandmother did, and then put the top just like that, and that's how it's
That's a
done.
good idea. So
Yeah.
wait, I have to back up a second. You
Go
said
ahead.
3 chickens in the water?
Well, that's for the chicken soup.
Oh.
But if you're making stock,
Stock.
well, you can make 3 chickens, 3 whole chickens, okay? And then about 7 pounds of bones, being backs,
my
maybe
gosh.
some wings. You put that all
Okay.
in, you let the chickens cook for about 45 minutes to an hour. Take the chickens out, cool them, take the skin, discard it, take the meat, put it to the side, put all those bones back in.
In.
It sounds like a lot of work, but it's so worth it. Carrot, celery, onion, your bay leaf and such, let that cook for about 5 hours. You have a lovely stock.
Okay.
Then you add the chopped chicken, fresh carrot, fresh celery, fresh onion, and your pasta, and you have a great soup.
Okay.
The chicken soup actually is in the cookbook. So
Okay,
yeah.
there we go.
There you go.
And we'll get the other one
Yeah.
from you, and we'll put it up on the website along
Yeah,
with this recipe
perfect.
too. So don't worry
This
about
is
that.
starting to smell great. I don't know if you're smelling it, but
Yes, I can.
it's
Yes,
smelling
I
really good. So
can.
we're going to continue to let it develop because that's step 2. So we want it to develop for a few minutes. And then at the end, we're going to add cannellini beans. These are white Great Northern beans. These are canned and they're permissible. You rinse them very well. These are kidneys. And
Okay.
these are also rinsed very well canned.
Now, whether I use fresh beans and I have soaked them overnight or whatever I'm
usually
supposed
you
to
put
do.
them in water and soak them overnight and then drain the water, change the water, and maybe cook them for about another 45 minutes to an hour. You'll have a similar thing. But canned beans are like one of those things, like certain frozen products that are really,
Really
very
good, right.
and convenient for most people.
So whether I soak them and cook them for 45 minutes or not, they still go into the soup at the same
At the
time.
very end, because
at
they
the
don't really
end.
need to cook too much.
Okay.
Now, sometimes what I do, just because I want to get inventive, is I'll take some of the beans and I'll puree them
Oh.
and then add it to the soup, and that will thicken the
Oh,
soup
that's neat.
naturally. My mother
Okay,
used
that
to
must
do
be
that.
delicious.
Yeah. And then add the rest of the beans to the soup. But in this case, it's pretty hearty because of everything we have in there, so I don't think we need additional thickening.
Okay. Oh my goodness,
So it's starting to smell great.
it really is.
Yeah. Now, I want to tell you a story. One time, I was on a ship going to Alaska, and we had a lot of salmon around. So I made this salmon corn chowder, and the executive chef said, "Can we serve this on the line?" And I was like, "Can you serve it on,
On the line. So what
Are
that
you-"
means 3,000
Yeah. What do you-
people?
But I mean, imagine my soup.
yeah, I
on the
do
line.
imagine that.
So I'm like, sure. So
That's
my sous chef,
that's
his name was
crazy.
Pablo. He was from Mexico. He said, "Chef, you come down and help me." I said, "No, Pablo, you know how to make it. You made it for the demonstration. You make the soup. I'll be up by the pool." So I went up by the pool, and about 20 minutes later, Pablo comes running toward the pool yelling, "Chef, chef." And it turned out, I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I put in too much time, too much time." So I go down to the galley, I got dressed, all of that. I went down, and of course I tasted the soup very gingerly, and I said, "Pablo, too much
Too
time."
much time.
But what we do? And I'm thinking, I don't know. I never made soup for 3,000 people. So we just
or put in too much time.
So we cut up more potatoes, we added more cream. I think we had soup for about 4,000 people, but
my gosh.
we stretched it out. That's a good point though, because if something is overpowering, like let's say salt, this needs more salt, you might add more potatoes. That will draw it out.
Okay.
Hopefully the product needs potatoes. You're not going to put it,
Right.
like, say, in spaghetti sauce. Some people said that to me, can I put a whole potato in the spaghetti sauce and we'll draw out the salt? I said, well, it might draw out some, but chances are you'll have mashed potatoes in the sauce, so I don't know if it's a good idea.
I'm sorry, it's not nice. And am I laughing at
It is-
someone's question?
It
That's
is kind
not
of
nice.
comical, though. But in any event, you can see how lovely this is starting to look. And several times, this is why we have several tasting spoons, we want to be sure, because you have no other way of knowing whether it's perfectly seasoned. And right now, in my opinion, it is.
It is.
So we're good. So that's almost ready to roll. So now I can add the beans. Those are the cannellinis. And as you can see, it's even making it thicker and
yeah.
more stew-like.
So does that happen often on the cruise ship? They ask you to cook
Actually,
for
it only happened
everyone?
once, and I'm so
Once
glad.
was enough?
Well, you know what? It's funny because you're in a precarious situation. One time they invited me to a tasting, and they invented this new soup or something. So they said, "Oh, we'll have the soup chef come." So I went down
The soup
and I
chef.
tasted it, and it was like awful. So like, do I say, "Oh, delicious," and then my validity goes, or do
Right.
and I'm a guest, or do I say? So my comment was, I think we need an adjustment on the seasoning. And I'm not sure that the
There we
depth
go.
is enough. And the executive, he's right. You know? So it all worked out. But so now when they ask me, I don't usually go sometimes because it does put me in a
Yeah, that is an
you're a
odd
guest.
position to be in, right?
And-
Absolutely.
And, you know, your professional reputation is on the line, so you have to tell the truth. So as you can see now, the beans have thickened up the soup a bit. The pasta is certainly swelling up, which means it's cooking. I'm going to remove that
Remove
bay
the
leaf,
bay
so there's
leaf.
no chance
There,
of
I
anyone
took your-
choking on that.
There we go.
And we'll let it cook a little bit more. And then about the finishing, I like to finish sometimes those kinds of soups with a little extra virgin olive oil. It
Okay.
has a very verdant flavor. We did sweat the vegetables with it, but when you add it at the very end and you don't cook it, it still keeps that raw, verdant quality. Excellent.
Okay.
And then maybe a little fresh parsley would be nice
All
to
right.
add to that verdancy. And then
I
some
love
grated
cheese in
Parmesan
there.
Reggiano
Absolutely.
or Pecorino Romano, which is a sheep's milk cheese, a little saltier, equally
That's
as
one
good.
of my favorites
They're
too.
all delicious.
Okay, we're going to do that when we return, so don't go away.
Make your life better by Degrees. Choose from over 100 academic and career programs at the area's lowest tuition. Achieve your career goals and reach your fullest potential at
Luzerne County Community College.
I'm glad you stayed with us. We are with Chef Joseph Caputo, and before we get to the soup, we've been making Italian minestrone, and before we get to that, let's talk a little bit more about his book. You know, I'm flipping through it. It's called The Accidental Chef. He wrote it, and it's a collection of recipes and stories. And you know, I'm flipping through the book and I'm asking him all different questions, and then we get to this one, the prime rib blockhouse.
You really want to hear that story?
Yeah, I do.
Well, you know, before I went to culinary school, I pretty much was self-taught, and having worked in restaurants, I pretty much came up through the ranks, and I knew quite a bit, but sometimes not enough. So I had done a party one time for a woman, and it was about 40 people in her home, and she wanted a prime rib dinner. So in those days, I did the entire dinner at the home. You know, I went out and checked it out and decided what I could make or what I could not. in any event, when I got there that morning, she said to me, "We have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "My oven isn't working." I said, "Well, that's a big problem because I had a prime rib like this." So she said, "Oh, I have a friend at one of the hotels in town. We can bring it over there." I said, "Oh, no, we're not doing it. It hasn't, here's the name right here." So I put my coat on and I put my apron on, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to start knocking on neighbors' doors." She said, "We just got to the neighborhood." I said, "Well, no time like the present to meet the neighbors." So the first door I knocked on, a woman answered the door, and she asked me if I was from the Food Network. And I said, "Not yet, but do you know the neighbors across the street?" And she didn't know them. And I said, "Well, tonight's the night. You're going to come over and you're going to meet them, and they're having a dinner." And I began to tell her about the menu.
Oh, that's too funny.
I said, and I pushed her into the house practically and got in the kitchen, and I thought, bingo, because she had 2 Jenner ovens right on the wall.
Okay.
So I said, "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I need these ovens. I just need them." So she thought it quite comical. So we seasoned up the roast and we put them in the ovens. And in those days there were no cell phones. I said, "Just dial this number when the buzzer goes off," because I had it set on a probe. And we left. One of my assistants came with me, and the story's in the book. And we go to get the prime ribs, and we're walking through the yard, and we didn't realize when we got to the door, we locked ourselves out of the house.
Oh, no.
So the rooms were set up, like the living room and such was where guests were seated. So how do we walk in with prime rib? I mean, it'd be like dominoes, except we're showing up with prime rib. So
Were they in big red bags?
It was in tin foil. So we traced around to the back of the house, and she had a swimming pool. So it was wintertime, and of course the gate was locked, so we couldn't get in the back.
Oh my gosh!
So I thought I just have to swallow my pride and go in through the front door, and it's just all over. I mean, it's when it just
had
chalk
to
it up.
be great. They were probably
Well,
laughing. Come on.
I know, but some people don't think it's funny. So as we're walking through the yard, I heard a garage door opening, and it turned out her son was in a rock band, so he was loading his car with drums. And I said, "Where does that lead?" And he said, "To the kitchen." I'm like, "Yep."
Perfect.
So we got in. But the funny part of that story is I told it one time in one of my cooking classes at Zupa, and a woman raised her hand and she said, "Chef, can I say something?" And I said, "Sure." She goes, "I was at that party, And I said, "How was the soup? Or how was the prime rib?" She said, "It was great." So that's all that counts. But there's a lot of stories like that.
So there are lots of stories like that in here, lots of
And they're all true.
travels and lots of recipes.
And they're all true.
Yeah, so you can learn about this if you want the book, get it,
Yeah, Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and get some
And
more
at Zupa.
information on our
I can
Zupa
autograph it for you if you come to Zupa.
and our website.
Yeah.
Well, now it's
you ready?
time for the soup.
You ready to try it?
Here we go.
So now look how nice and hearty this looks. And we're going to finish it off. I'm going to give you a nice portion. Some vegetable,
He
of course.
heard about me.
And
He's
then
gonna
you
give
want
me a nice
some of the
portion.
broth, right?
Yeah.
And then a little fresh parsley, just a little bit. Gives it a little color
that
and a
looks
little
nice.
zest, right? And then we
Yeah, I
have
want
that.
to see how you do this. I never
Just a
did this
small
before.
drizzle like this over the top. That's it. Oh, the
It's
best part of all.
cheese.
So a little bit like this.
Okay. It looks so much nicer when you do it than
Well,
when I do it.
you think of it like your palette here, how you're going to paint on the canvas.
That's
Is it
really
good?
good.
Yeah, we sell
It's
110 gallons of
delicious.
soup a week, so I know it must be good.
110 gallons. It's
It's
delicious.
really good. Yeah, it's good.
It's really good.
Very good.
So get out there, get all the ingredients and make this. It's really worth it. And
It's
thank you
healthy.
so much for joining
you.
us.
My
This
pleasure.
was terrific.
I had a lot of fun.
I'm glad you did because so did I. And I had lots of fun. I hope you did too. So join us next time. Bye.